This is Callum Johnson and you're watching Sporting Icons.
So for those of you who did not get to see my interview with Callum Johnson a few weeks ago, which was a few weeks after his fight with BBBoC, and of course he was here on the channel, and if those of you who haven't seen it yet, all you got to do is go to the playlists and go to live chats with pro boxers and you can listen to it in there. And it went on for quite some time, and very forthcoming guy, real nice gentleman guy, and I like him a lot. Now within this one I asked a question: is there a possibility that you could in fact vacate the British title and the Commonwealth title and maybe go after European or start fighting at world level? And he says that he hasn't really made up his mind yet as to what he's going to do. Now, only about a week or two ago, the British Boxing Board of Control ordered him to take on Joshua Buatsi. In other words, defend his light heavyweight title, the British title, against Joshua Buatsi. Buatsi, he's only had half a dozen fights himself, so you could probably argue that it might be a little too early for Buatsi, but of what we've seen of him, he looks the real deal. He really does. And Callum Johnson, the way he blitzed through Frank Buglioni and then went straight into a world title fight with Arthur Beterbiev after the likes of Anthony Yarde and that declined. But ultimately, the British Boxing Board of Control have ordered Buatsi to take on Callum Johnson. And Callum Johnson seems pretty okay with it, to be honest. Now, it did take me by surprise. I thought that Anthony Yarde or Jose Burton may get the nod over Joshua Buatsi, as I said, he's only had half a dozen fights, but that's not how it is. So anyway, Callum Johnson has reacted pretty well to this news, and as I said on this interview, and you guys will hear that Callum Johnson, very humble guy. I've never really heard him trash anybody. So anyway, this is what he said about Joshua Buatsi, and of course I'll put this article in the description box for you guys, so go have a read of it. Anyway, Callum Johnson's statement: the Buatsi fight does interest me, and if that fight is going to happen, it will happen. I'll leave it down to Joe Gallagher and Eddie Hearn to sort it out. I believe I can knock anybody out in the world, even Beterbiev. Buatsi is no different. He's a great fighter, very good, but at the same time, I believe in myself and I believe I can beat anybody. It'd possibly be too early for him. He has the skills and is very technically good, but he hasn't had a hard fight against someone as strong as me yet, someone who would put him under pressure. I have nothing but good things to say about Buatsi, and I'm sure down the line he would make for a great big domestic showdown. Fighting on December the 22nd has been mentioned a bit, and I'd like to get another win to get back on track, but I've had no confirmation yet. I've only been back in training a few weeks, so it wouldn't be a title fight. So that is Callum Johnson's statement. He did continue, actually, I may as well go on with that one. I'm just going to go see what happens with what my options are. It's just what gets offered. If there's no other options there but to keep the British title, then I'll keep it. However, if I get a world title eliminator or a shot at European, then I will go for that. I'm back in training, switched on, and looking forward to 2019. Hopefully by the end of it, I can be back in there, looking to lift that world title again. I know I'm making excuses, but I only had 90 seconds of boxing in 2 years ahead of that Beterbiev fight. A couple of good wins under my belt with proper activity will only bring out the very best in me. I believe I can win those kind of fights. So that is all of Callum Johnson's statement. So as I said, very humble guy. He didn't trash Buatsi. He did say that maybe it's a bit early for Buatsi, and I think a lot of people may echo that. Now, people do believe in Buatsi and do believe he will go on to become world champion at some point. But is it a case of pushing him too early? Maybe. Potentially, yes. And against Callum Johnson, who does come to fight. And as I said before, when he fought Arthur Beterbiev, that's a fight that really he shouldn't have really had. And as he said just then, which he said to me on the channel here, is that he only had 90 seconds worth of ring time in 2 years. And he went in there against Beterbiev and he didn't back down. And who knows what would have happened had he put his foot on the gas right after he dropped Beterbiev. So who knows? Who knows what would have happened? There's a lot of ifs and buts about it. Of course, when he got dropped the first time by Beterbiev as well, the referee did say break. And Callum Johnson dropped his hands and he got hit after the referee said break. So for me, that was an illegal punch, but ultimately, is that pretty much what caused him to back off after he dropped Beterbiev? Either way, we don't know, and he did end up getting stopped. Now, against Joshua Buatsi. Very, very good opponent. For me personally, if I was part of the British Boxing Board of Control, which I never will be, you know, I'm not old enough, and I think I know a little bit too much about boxing to be in that kind of job. I would have put Anthony Yarde in there. Now, I'm not saying that Anthony Yarde would have took the fight against Callum Johnson. I don't believe for a second that he would have, and Frank Warren, in my opinion, would not have let him. So maybe that's pretty much what they thought. If they order that fight, it's not going to happen. We're just wasting everybody's time. Let's just go straight to Buatsi. Now, you could say, well, what about Hosea Burton? Now, Hosea Burton, Callum Johnson, these guys train together. So, there it is for that one. So, I suppose Buatsi is pretty much next in line. There are a few more around that you probably could argue as well. But ultimately, Callum Johnson versus Joshua Buatsi is a pretty good fight. And especially if you're going to be putting it on December 22nd, which is the Dillian Whyte versus Dereck Chisora, the rematch. Undercard. As I said to you guys about a week or so ago, when I gave you guys a list of all the fights that were confirmed on the undercard, and I threw some names out there to you that I heard could potentially be on the undercard, and Callum Johnson was one of them, and it's certainly looking like it could well be. But ultimately, we'll have to wait and see what happens. Callum Johnson versus Joshua Buatsi. Very, very interesting fight. There again, would Joshua Buatsi take it? I think he probably would take it, to be fair. But let's see what happens with Callum Johnson. It does seem that Eddie Hearn, a lot of his matchroom fighters are fighting each other lately, which is great. I wish Frank Warren would do that with Daniel Dubois, Nathan Gorman, and, you know, just step up Anthony Yarde. But it is what it is. For me, I think if Callum Johnson does get an opportunity at a European title or a final eliminator or ultimately a world title fight before this one gets confirmed, I say, yeah, crack on. Crack on. For me, he's easily above European level. I don't think there's a European champion out there right now or European level guy that would beat Callum Johnson. That's just my honest opinion on it. But anyway, we'll have to wait and see. So, article in the description box as always. Go give it a read. But before you do, click the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you subscribe if you haven't done so already. And I will catch you all on the next video.